Hey guys, so I'm back again with day 2 of the MERN learning challenge, and today we'll be looking at the request object. The request object is used to handle all our requests from our client all the way to the server. So I'd like us to start with maybe we can just look at the structure of a typical request, which is crafted once you send a request to the server. So in a case whereby you type in www.example.com on your browser and then send it to the server, then right click and click on inspect, and then you navigate all the way to the network tab of the inspection page. Then you'll notice that we have an instance of the request which you tried to send to the server. So anytime you click on that request, you'll notice there are two things. You'll notice a request and a response. So when you navigate to the request, then you'll see something of this format. So a request which is sent to the server will contain of the HTTP method used, in our case here post. It will have a path where you are trying to access. Maybe it can be login, it can be in our example here /API/user/ all this, and then you'll notice HTTP/1.1. This is the HTTP version. Then you'll also see the host. The host will be the domain name which you are trying to access, the main domain name. If you went to www.google.com, then the host will be google.com, right? Then inside that request, we have the first part here. Then the rest will be categorized under headers. So all these are headers, and headers come in the form of a name, which is the name of the header, and then the value. So in our case, we have the name, which is the host, and then you have example.com, and then you have all these others. They are not necessarily the exact ones which I've used here. There are some requests might have fewer, other requests may have more, depending on how that particular request is crafted. Some will have more security headers, among others. And then also, when you notice, we have this part here, and this one also constitutes the request body. In a case whereby you want to send your login details, let's say a username and a password, then they will be sent to the server in this format. So in some websites, they might be sent through this format, or they will be included inside the query string here. So this is what we call the query string, this part after the question mark. So having understood that, then we can dive in and try to look at the request object in MERN. So the request object will come or is packaged with a couple of properties, and we are going to start with request.app. So what request.app does, it is just a reference to the Express instance and is normally useful for accessing the application-wide settings. In the last video, we looked at something like app.locals, where you can set your own properties which will belong to that application. Then also the application, that instance of Express, normally has some settings properties. You can navigate to the official documentation, and then you can see a whole table which contains all those properties. So in our case here, request.app is just going to give us an access to all those properties. So maybe we can look at an example. We can do, since I've already set up my project, you can visit the video of day 1, then you can see how to set up an Express project. So now we can do an example by having app.get this way. Then you can navigate to app demo. Then we'll have a callback function which will take in request and result. Then we will do something like you can do constant app name, and then we are going to obtain it using the request.app.now.get. Then inside here, we are going to do the name of the property which you want to get. So since we have not defined the app name property, Then up here I'm going to define it using app.set. So I can set something like this. I'm going to set, since we want to get the app name, then the value, the key here will be app name, and then I can give it a value of my app that way. Then yeah, so now we can do console.log, and then now we can access that app name here. So anytime we navigate to this route, once it's executed, this callback function will be triggered. Then we will have the value of app name, which is my app, logged in our console. So my server should be running on port 3000. Let me save. My server is actually running on port 3000, and then to test that, I'm going to use curl. So I'm gonna do curl, then navigate to http localhost, and then the path which we have used is app demo. So just a minute, let me correct some things here. Let me first close this, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Then I'm going to do npm run dev again. Yes, and then our application is running. And then when I try to use curl, so the reason I'm using curl now is because I'm not recording my browser. So since this is just some basics, I'm going to be testing using the curl command. So if you are not familiar with the curl command, you can just go and install it in your machine, and once you install it, you can use a command like curl-h. Then you'll be able to see all the options which are required. Then you can play around with it. You can play around with the tool. So since I've already installed that, I've already installed my curl tool, so I'll be using it to test the requests. So when I run that, you'll notice that in our console we get the name of the application. So that is that because of this function here. So we are trying to get this property name using the request.app. The next one is the request.baseURL. The request.baseURL, and basically what it does is it will return the base URL of a router. As simple as that. So we can define, let's do I can do router.get. Then in here I'm going to pass in a path /users, and then I'm going to do the callback function, and then inside the body I'm going to do res.send. And for now you don't have to understand res. We will only be using in this case maybe we'll use res.send and res.json, only those two. But in the next video I'm going to dive in deeper on the response object. And then we will also look at all the properties which are available there, and also the methods. So for now, just follow along with me. Then we are going to use base URL, and then in that base URL I'll get the base URL using request.base URL. .base URL, like that. And then since we have not defined this router, I'm going to define it. I'm going to do const app is equals not app, const router. Const router is equals to app.router, that way. And then I'll also use app.use after this definition here. I'm going to do app.use, then I'm going to mount that router on a particular path, which is API. Then I'm going to call it that way. Let me adjust my machine a little bit. Sorry, let me adjust my machine a little bit because I'm having a lot of typos which I'm not expecting. So once we mount this router on this path, then I expect that the base URL will be API and not users. So let me save, confirm that my server is running okay. Then to test that, I'm going to use curl, then I will do curl http, and then we're using localhost, and the path here is API/users. So when I run that, then you realize the output is /API and not /users. So /API here is just going to be the base URL, and the base URL will normally be the route on which you mount a particular middleware. In our case, /API. So /users will belong to another category, which will use another request property to access it. Sorry for that. We'll use another property to access it, and since this belongs to the path, we are going to use request.path to access users. But anytime we use the base URL, then the base URL will be the path whereby we try to mount that particular middleware. So if I use request.path here, let me confirm the server is running good. Then when I try to run that again, then you realize that now the path URL is /users and not /API. /API will be the base URL. The next one will be request.body, and here let's try and look at request.body. And what request.body has is it will contain the past request body. This is the request body here in our example. So I'm going to write the middleware. Then after that, I am going to pass in this data into the request, and then I'm going to console.log it. So now we have the request.body here. So the function will be something like app.post. I'm going to use the post method because it's the most appropriate one for this one. Then I'm going to do maybe login, and then I pass in a callback function. The callback function is that. Then now we'll do result.send. Then inside here I will do I should not use that, but backticks. I'm going to do welcome. Then I'm going to fetch the request body. So now here we are going to do request.body.username. That way. Yeah, so when we go to curl and try to test this endpoint, when we navigate to localhost/login, then you need to see something like welcome. Then we are going to fetch the value of username, which is John Doe. So to do that, we are going to use curl, and then inside curl we are going to pass in some data. So curl, then the method is post, and then we are going also to pass in some headers. I'm going to pass in content type application/JSON. Then this -d is for sending in the data. So this is the data which we need to send along with that request. Then this is just my URL, and the endpoint is /login in small letters. So /login. So when I navigate to this part, then what do I expect is the output? I expect what? Okay, so let me change this a little bit because we are trying to fetch the username. So I'm gonna change this to the username to MERN. and then let me get rid of this, and then let me change this to John Doe. So when I save this, I confirm, then I send that request. I'm getting all this. So curl-x is post, content type is this -d, and then we are trying to pass in to them, and then we are using /login. So okay, basically the point is, when you navigate to this endpoint here, then you should be able to get this value. This value should be fetched. So let me check, maybe I have some errors. Welcome request.body.username. Let me try something. Let me try adding. I'll try doing app.use. Then I'm gonna do express.json. So I'm going /this, and then maybe, I don't know, it should be working. Yeah, so now you see we get the username. So we get the message, welcome John Doe. So that is that. So maybe just a recap is, anytime we navigate to this particular path, this callback function will be called, and in our case the callback function is just going to access that body, and after accessing that body, then we get the username. I think the error we were getting was because we did not use this particular middleware, because the request.body, when you want to work with it, you have to pass it first. It has to be passed, and that is the reason why we have gone ahead and used this particular middleware, which is express.json. We could also use something like this, passing a JSON value, and then we could maybe modify this one so that it could have a format of JSON. But for now, let's stick to send. I'm going to show you where we are going to use response.json appropriately. And then again, I also mentioned in the next video, we are going to look at response, or the response object, and then we are going also to see to see how all the properties inside that particular object and methods will come into play inside our MERN stack. So yeah, so that's it. The next one is request.cookies, and so request.cookies will just contain cookies which are sent by the client. I'm sorry, I think I'm having some cold. So the request.cookies will just contain the cookies which are sent by client. Examples of cookies could be, we could have the session cookies, we can have the authorization cookies. A request will have different forms of cookies, just depending on how it is defined. So we can do an example where we can try to get some cookies or fetch some cookies from our request. So I'm going to do app.get. Then for this, I'm going to use /cookies, and then I'm going to do the callback function and response. Then I'm going to do response.send, and then I'm going to use backticks, and I'm going to do new theme, and then I'm going to fetch request.cookies.theme, and I'm going to show you where we are going to pass in this value, and if that one doesn't exist, then we're going to pass in a message like default. Then I'm going to have a semicolon there, save that, confirm whether my server is running okay. Then in here I'm going to use CURL now to test that. So I'm going to use CURL dash h for including a header, and then I'm going to do cookie, and this cookie should be capital C because it's a header, and then I'm going to give it its value, theme dark. And then after that, theme is equals to dark. Then after all this, I'm going now to call our URL, which is localhost port 3000. Then I'm going to go to /cookies. Cannot get the property defined, so let's do -h. Let me get rid of this first, and then I'm going to debug. Okay, CRL-h, we are using cookie, then theme dark, then I'm passing that. So the output of this should get this value, right? That is the logic which we have. So the error which I'm getting is cannot read properties of undefined, and then it's trying to read theme. So cookies.theme, what did we pass here? We passed in this value. Okay, so suppose we had this theme inside our request. For example, here, if we had a cookie which was called theme is equals to something like that dark mode, then we would get that theme. We would get that thing from the server. So I don't know why I'm running into this. I could have debugged it for sure, but I really don't want the video to be long. But that is basically what the request.cookies is going to do. Now the next one is request.refresh and request.stale, and then these ones are just going to check if the request is maybe unmodified, and they do use the e-tag header. So anytime we pass in that, the engine is going to check out the e-tag header, and then it will check if it was modified. It can also look at the last modified header, and then now it's able to make decisions based on that. So as an example, I can do app.get, then the path I'm going to use cage check. Then of course we're going to pass in a request and a response. Then define our body here. Then you can just do response.send, and then you can do request.fresh. If not, okay, if this request is fresh, or rather if it's available in the cage and if it's not modified, then we will return fresh. Otherwise, we are going to return stale. That way. Let me save this, and then I forgot that. Yeah, so now we are going to use URL to test that. So you can do CURL-h, then I'm going to edit this. If it doesn't work, it's okay. We are just learning. If none, match header, then I give it a value of 1, 2, 3. Then I change this to cage check. And does it say cannot get cage check? The server is running, okay. Yeah, so basically that is it, right? It's just going to check if your request was modified, and if it was, it will check if it's available in your cage first, and then it will also check if that request was modified. Then if it was, or if it wasn't, then it's going to return this one. So this basically means if that request is fresh, or rather if it's unmodified, then it will return fresh, otherwise return stale. So stale would also mean that it has expired from the cage, or rather it could also be modified. Then we have request.host. So request.host is going to return the host name from the host header, right? And then also if the trust proxy header doesn't return, is it the trust proxy header? No, if the trust proxy setting from the application settings does not evaluate to false, then this host value will be derived from a header which is known as x forwarded hosts. Otherwise, it will be got from the from the host header in our example like this here. But if that value but if that value, if the trust proxy does not evaluate to false, then we can also get it from x forwarded hosts, just a header which is similar to this, but it will contain some host names there. So to do that, we are going to do app.get, and then I'm going to navigate to /hosts. Then I'll do requests, response, request and response. Then I'll define my body here. Then I can do response.send, and then I use backticks there. Then I can do hosts. Then I fetch it from request.hostName. So we have request.hostName and request.host, and they pretty much do like almost the same functionality. They are just going to return the host name or the hoster, and then it will also depend on the trust proxy setting. If it does not evaluate to false, then this value can be derived from other headers instead of the host, and as we have seen, the x forwarded host. So since now I have this, I can go. So this should return localhost because our host is localhost, right? So let me save this. Then after saving, navigate to here. My server is running well. Then I can use CURL. Then I can do HTTP. Then here we used what? Hosts. We used /hosts. Yeah. So when I run this, then you see I get the localhost. So this is my host name, localhost, and then you also return localhost here. So let me clear that. Then we can move on to the next. Also hosts. Host is going to do something similar to that. And you see it returns localhost and also the port right there. The next one will be the request.ip, and basically what request.ip does, it returns the IP address which uniquely identifies that machine onto the server. So when I do request.ip, so let me write the function right away, app.get, then I'm going to use /ip. I'm going to use /ip here, then I'm going to write my callback function. Then here I'm just going to use response.send. Then I'm going to do some backticks. Then I can do your IP is, and then I can use this. Then I do request.ip. So under request and IPs, we have request.ip and we also have request.ips. So these two are a little bit different, even though they all return IP addresses. So request.ip is going to return a single IP address. If the trust proxy does not evaluate to false, then this value will be derived from the x forwarded for, and normally it's the leftmost value for request.ip, because the x forwarded for header here can have a couple of IPs, but request.ip is only going to return one of those IP addresses. then request.ips is going to return an array of IP addresses. So in our example here we have 192.168.1.1 and 10.0.0.1. Then request.ips is going to return an array of all the IP addresses which are found inside the X forwarded form. Yeah, so I don't should I run this? Let me just run it. I'm going to blur that part so that none of you gets my IP address. So yeah, I'm going to do /IP and then here you get /1. So this means that this a local host. The local host IP address 127.0.0.1, yeah, I guess. So I'm not going to blur off that one. You don't have my actual IP address. Alright, so the next property of the request object would be request.method. And a request.method is basically going to return the HTTP method which has been used for that particular request. So if you wanted to get contents from the server, we could use the method of get. If you wanted to upload details, you could use post. If you wanted to edit those details, you can use put. If you wanted to delete a resource, you can use the delete request method. And so a request.method is just going to return the method which has been used in a particular request. So if I do app.post, then this one should get post because we have used a request method of post in that particular request. So here I can do /method and then I can do request response. Then I can define our body here. I can do response.send and then can use backticks. Then I'll do method. The method is, then I'll use $, then curly braces, then I can do request.method. Sorry, so this one is just going to fetch the particular method which we have used in that request, in our case posts. So let me save that, confirm whether the server is running well. It's running okay. Then I can do curl, then I navigate to that particular path. So we are using method, and then if I run this one, I don't think if you are going to get like the particular method. Yeah, we are not going to get the particular method because since we are using curl, then I will have to pass it here. So I'm going to pass post, then like that. Then now we can get post. So post here is basically the request method which has been used in that particular request from the client all the way to the server. So the next one is request.params. So request.params is going to it's going to get all the parameters inside a route. So basically request.params is going to fetch all the parameters which have been used inside a route. So let's do this app.get. Then I can have a URL which is users. Then I can add a parameter which will be the ID, right? Then now let me define my callback function here, request and response. Then it's an arrow function which returns response.send. Then I'm going to use backticks. Then I'll do user ID. So in order for us to fetch the ID which has been used in that particular request, then we are going to use, we have to use request.params and then the name of that particular parameter. So in our case here, let me do $, and then I will do request.params and then the name of that parameter. So in our case we are using ID. So when I save this, we observe the server is running okay. Then we're going to use URL. Then I'm going to do HTTP. Then here is users. and then we have to pass in an ID. So when I run this, then I should get this value of 1. I should get this 1 because that one is the parameter which we are passing along with that request. Then you see I'm getting 1. So you get user ID and then its value there. The next one will be the request.query, and then we also we checked that a request can have a query string, and a query string normally has this format here. So anything after the question mark is the query string. So in our case, language and then the value. So a query string will take in a key or a name, and then that key or name will also take a value, right? So in other cases, you can see something like search is equals to a particular value, right? So all that is a query string. All that is a query string. So let me just get it back to language and English. So the code for that, we can do something like app.get. Then we can navigate to the path of search. This should be /search, sorry for that. Then we are going to do request and response, and then in here I'm going to just do response.send, and then I think I should use I should use backticks. Then I can do query will be the query which we pass along in that particular request. So I'm going to do request.query .q. Then let me save this, check my server is running good, and then use URL to test. So I'm going to use this, and then the path is search, and then we are having a query string of q. So I can do q is equals to express. Then let me get rid of this and outside this. Yeah, so we have q. So inside here, the name of our query parameter is q. That's why inside I did request.query.q. So we are going to fetch in q from that request. No match is found. Let me check. Search. Search. Then okay, so you have search. What did I use? Capital? No. Why is this failing? Should not be failing. Or maybe I can do some strings here. Still not found. Search. Is this that? No. Alright, but basically, why is it failing? Not much found. HTTP localhost this, search is equals to that. Maybe it's because I'm trying to make up my own examples, but request.query, and then the name of that query. Alright, but the point here is request.query is just going to return the name of the query which you pass inside a URL here. So in our case, we should have gotten q. I just don't understand why I'm not getting it. So so here we get query is an undefined. Okay. Q is equals to express. Oh yeah. So while using, we did not insert this escape character, and that is why. So now you see that we get the value of that query string. So in our case we are using Q. If we use another one, say search or name, then we will get that that query is undefined. But when I go back to my code here, then I change this to name and then use the same requests as earlier, then now you can see that I get that value. So the next one is request.protocol, and request.protocol is going to return the protocol which is being used. This protocol can be HTTP, can be HTTPS, it can be FTP for fetching the files from, or rather for file transfers, among others. So for that we are going to do something like app.get, and then we also have request.secure. So request.secure is going to return a boolean value, whether true or false, depending on the HTTP protocol which is being used. If you are using HTTPS, then request.secure is going to return true. If you are not using HTTPS and maybe you are using HTTP, then request.secure is going to return false, because you are not using a secure protocol. So maybe to check on request.protocol, I'm going to define a path here which I'm going to call protocol, and then I'm going to do the callback function here, which is request and a response, and then here I'm just going to do response.send so that you can get that. Then I'm going to use backticks here. I'm going to do protocol is then full colon $, then I'm going to fetch that value. So request.protocol. So this one is going to get the protocol which we are using. So if it was a browser, then you should get something like HTTP, because the browser use the HTTP and all that. So here I'm going to change all this to protocol. Then now you see the protocol which I'm using is HTTP. So since the protocol which I'm using is HTTP, then this one means if I use the request.secure, then I should get false. So let me add that here. Let me get creative with this one. So I'm going to do protocol with that, or then I can do that one. Then I can do secure. And then I can also use the $, which is the template strings. Then I can do request.secure here, and then this one is going to check whether my connection is secure, whether I'm using HTTPS. And since we saw that I'm using HTTP, then you are going to get HTTP, and then secure here would be, it should be false. So yeah, so you see secure is false. So that's because I'm using HTTP. But if I could be in a case where I'd be using HTTPS, then the result would be different. In the protocol I'd get HTTPS, and then in secure it would be true because I'm using a secure protocol. But for now, since I'm using HTTP, let's just stick to what we have for now. The next one would be request.get, and request.get basically will get a request header, right? And it is normally case insensitive. So we saw that we have very many request headers. We can have host, we can have x-forwarded for, we can have accept, we can have accept language, all these, we can have cookie, all these ones are headers. And so request.get is going to get all those headers from your requests, and normally it's case insensitive. So let's write something. Let's write a middleware which is going to do that. So I'm going to do app.get, then I'll do /header since we are working on headers right now. Then I'll do requests and response. Then in here I'll do response.send, and I'll use backticks, of course, because I'm template stringing. Then user agent will be, so for me to get the user agent, then I can use requests.get. Then in here I pass in what? I'll pass in the header which I want to get. In our case is user agent, and it is case insensitive, it doesn't matter. So in our request here, you might notice that user agent has a capital U and a capital A, but in our case we are just using a small U and a small a. It is case insensitive. This request is also going to fetch our user agent. So let me save that. Then I'll go to /header. My server is running well. Then I'll go to /header. Then we get the agent which we are using to access that particular request. In our case, we are using CURL. But if it was in Firefox or Brave or any other browser such as Chrome, then this value here would have a string which shows the name of the browser. For example, it could be something like this one, Mozilla blah 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 blah, this one here. So the next one which I wanted to look is request.accepts, and what this one does is it will check if the client accepts a response type. These response types or response formats, they can be it can be JSON, could be image, could be text, it could be anything. So request.accept will return a boolean value, I guess, which should check whether that particular request will accept a particular format, for example JSON. So in this example, I'm going to work with JSON to demonstrate this. So in here, I'm going to do app.get, then the path will be /accepts. Then I'm going to do request response. Then I'm going to, I can write something like, I can write, let me just write some logic here. Then it will be something like, if request should be request dot, we are working with accept, so if request dot accepts, then here it's JSON, right? Then if request dot accepts JSON, then I'm going to do response dot JSON. So you are going to have like the response in JSON, and then you are going to pass in what you want here. So we want to have format and then the value JSON, else should be there, else I'm going to get response.send, and then I'm going to do something like fallback in here. Then the server crashed, of course, because of this. I'm sure it's this. Unexpected identifier. So if request.accepts JSON, let me use this. Then here I'm going to do that response.json. Then I'm going to pass in the JSON, which is format. Then JSON as the value. Then I can get rid of this. If request then also this. What is happening here? I'm confused. So we have this, then we also have else. So for us, I'm also going to do that. Then get rid of that. Then save. Then pass that one down here. Then also pass that down here. Save that. And let me check. My server is still crashing an unexpected token. Which token am I not having? If this one, then I'm going to have this. JSON for that, else response.send this. I think this is good. Unexpected token. Where is that token? So we have this. Oh, maybe that is not closed. Oh yeah, that was not closed, so let me check. Oh, still crashing. Okay, this should belong to that. This. Okay, so I think that should be there. I'll get rid of that. Okay, I'm confused. So you have this, just going to have that. We have this, just going to close something else here. Then you have if this. Let me start again. Let me start again. I'm already confused by whatever I'm doing here. So I'm going to have that. Then I can close, and of course close that. Alright, so the server is now running good. So let's do now this. So if request.accepts, then inside here we are going to pass in the value JSON. So if request.accepts JSON, here we're going to do response.json. Then I'm going to pass in a JSON here. Then we have format, and then the value of JSON. I think we are good. Yeah, we are good. Value of JSON, then else. So else here, I'm going to do response.send. Then I'm going to do fallback, just like before. Then I'm going to do that, and save. Okay, so it's working good. So the logic here is we want to navigate to this particular path /accepts, and then we do if that request accepts JSON, which is which should be fetched from this header here, the accept one, then we should do what? Then we should have it returning something like this one. Else we are going to return this as the response. So the path is /accepts. So I'm going to do curl this and then /accepts, and I'm going to pass in a header here. I'm going to pass in a header which is accept. Then I'm going to pass in application/JSON. I'm going to close that. So we have already made the request to accept JSON, and so what we expect to be returned is this particular value here, this JSON value. So let's send, and then we get the JSON. So the JSON is format and JSON. Yeah, so the next one which maybe we need to look at is request.is. So request.is is going to check the request's content type. So since here we have used what in our previous request here, we used application/JSON. So request.is is going to check the request content type. So this one just deals with the content type header here. Inside here, the content type. So we will be passing in this particular value in that, and I think it should be returning a Boolean value. Alright, so let's write something here. We're going to do app.get. Okay, let's use post in this one. then I'm going to do slash type check, then I'm going to do request response, then I'll do if, and I hope I'm not going to get confused. Now if request dot is, then we pass in the content type here, JSON. If request dot is JSON, then you are going to return response dot send, and what we are sending here is valid JSON. That way, else, so else should come also here. Else, we are going to do response dot status. We are going to set the status to maybe 400 dot send. So don't worry, we will be looking at the response object in the next video. Dot send invalid type. So let's save that. Let me add that. Check whether my server is running okay. It's running good. Then in CURL, we are going to navigate to slash type check. So here we are going to navigate to slash type check with an hyphen. Then I'll need to pass in a couple of things. Since my request is using posts, I'm going to do post, and I'll also pass in a header. And that header, so since we are dealing with content type, I'll pass in the content type header, and then I'm going to assign a value to it, which is application JSON. That way. Then I'll pass in data because it's poster. I'll pass in data, and this data will basically be an empty object or array there. Then I can send that. So when I send, I get valid JSON because the content type here is application slash JSON. So the content type is JSON. So when I come here, inside the definition of our middleware here, we say if that request is JSON, then we should return valid JSON. Else, we return something else, like we change that status code to 400, then we send the message invalid type. So to do that, maybe I can change from JSON here, then I can do texts. Then now you see we get invalid type. We get invalid type in here. So I hope you've understood that one. Yeah, and so that was what I wanted us to check on about the request object. And then in the next video, we are going to look at the response object and the properties which come with the response object, as well as the methods. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you in the next one.